Geoff stood in the hallway with his phone pressed tight against his ear, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold it. Rebecca, Geoff said, his voice cracking, the seizure was so bad that Aaron can't talk in full sentences now. Please tell me you got a judge. Please tell me somebody is willing to hear this case. On the other end of the phone, Rebecca was quiet for a second. Geoff already knew that silence. He hated that silence. Geoff, Rebecca said softly, no one will touch that family. Geoff closed his eyes and leaned against the wall. In the next room, Aaron was lying on the couch with Frank sitting beside him, trying to keep him calm. Aaron's eyes were open, but every time he tried to speak, the words came out broken and trapped, like his own body was fighting against him. Geoff swallowed hard. Rebecca, Frank and I are scared right now, Geoff said. Give us something, anything. Rebecca let out a heavy breath. I have called every judge I trust, she said. Every one of them knows what Mary's family can do. They are afraid of losing their jobs, their careers, their lives being destroyed. This is bigger than one case now. Geoff's face twisted in anger. So what? He snapped. Aaron almost died because of them, and now everyone just looks the other way. I didn't say I was giving up, Rebecca said, but I need you to understand what we are dealing with. Geoff looked back toward the living room. Aaron's hand reached for Frank's shirt like he was trying to hold on to the only safe thing left in the room. Frank looked up at Geoff, and Geoff could see it in his eyes. Fear. Real fear. Not the kind people talk about when they are angry, the kind that sits in your chest and makes you wonder if anyone is coming to save you. Geoff turned away from the living room so Aaron would not see him breaking down. Rebecca, Geoff whispered, my brother has a TBI, he already fights every day just to get through life. Mary came into his home, brought cops, threatened us and scared him so bad his body gave out. Now he can't even talk right. How am I supposed to tell him nobody wants to help? Rebecca's voice softened. You don't tell him that, she said, you tell him I am still looking. Geoff wiped his face with his sleeve. That's not enough. I know, Rebecca said, but it is what I have right now. Geoff clenched his jaw. Then find someone who is not scared, he said, because I don't care how powerful that family is anymore. They came after Aaron, they came after Frank, they came after me, and if the courts won't protect us, then what the hell are we supposed to do? Rebecca paused again. This time her silence felt different. Geoff, she said carefully, there might be one judge. Geoff stood up straight. What? There is one judge who retired last year. He still has influence and he hates families who think money makes them untouchable. I don't know if he can help, but he might know who can. Geoff's heart started beating faster. Call him. I already left a message. Call him again. I will. No, Geoff said, you call him until he answers. Rebecca did not argue. Okay, she said, I'll call him again. Geoff lowered the phone and looked into the living room. Frank was sitting on the floor now, one hand on Aaron's arm, speaking to him quietly. You're okay, Aaron, Frank said. You're safe, Geoff is here, I'm here. Aaron's lips moved. The words came out broken. Gee, Geoff. Geoff rushed into the room and dropped down beside him. I'm here, Geoff said, grabbing Aaron's hand. I'm right here. Aaron's eyes filled with tears. He can't talk right. Geoff's heart shattered. I know, he said, I know, brother, but you don't have to force it right now, just breathe. Aaron squeezed his hand. Frank looked at Geoff. What did Rebecca say? Geoff looked down for a second. Then he looked back at Frank. She said everyone is scared of Mary's family, Geoff said, but she might have one lead. Frank shook his head, furious. One lead? Aaron almost died, Geoff. I know. No, Frank said, his voice rising. He almost died in front of us in his own house, because that woman walked in here like she owned him. Aaron flinched at the sound of Frank's voice. Frank immediately stopped and lowered his tone. I'm sorry, Aaron, Frank said. I'm sorry, I'm not mad at you. Aaron blinked slowly, tears sliding down his face. Geoff looked at Frank and said, we have to keep him calm. Frank nodded, but his face was still full of rage. Geoff turned back to Aaron. Listen to me, Geoff said. Rebecca is still fighting, I'm still fighting, Frank is still fighting, you are not alone in this. Aaron tried to speak again. Don't leave. Geoff leaned closer. I'm not leaving, he said. I already made that mistake once, I'm not doing it again. Frank looked away when Geoff said that. The guilt hit the room like a heavy storm. Geoff knew what Frank was thinking. He had not been there when Aaron needed him before. He had stayed away too long, trying to protect the house, trying to protect the family name, trying to convince himself that distance was helping. But seeing Aaron like this changed everything. The house did not matter. Money did not matter. Fear did not matter. His brother was lying there, broken by people who thought they were untouchable. And Geoff was done being scared. He looked at Frank. "We're not running anymore," Geoff said. Frank nodded slowly. "No," Frank said, "we're not." Aaron stared at them both, trying to understand every word. Geoff held his hand tighter. "You hear me, Aaron?" Geoff said. "Mary and her family want us scared, they want us quiet, but they made one mistake." Aaron blinked. Geoff leaned in close. "They came after my brother." The phone buzzed in Geoff's hand. He looked down. It was Rebecca. Geoff answered immediately. "Tell me you got him." Rebecca's voice came through low and serious. "Geoff," she said, "the retired judge called me back." Geoff froze. Frank stood up. Aaron's eyes locked onto Geoff's face. Rebecca continued. "He wants to meet tonight." Aaron looked at Geoff, then Frank, then the phone in Geoff's hand. His face was pale, his body still looked weak from the seizure, and every word took everything out of him. But his eyes were clear. Aaron swallowed hard and forced himself to speak. "I want case." Geoff froze. Frank leaned closer. "Aaron, don't push yourself," Frank said softly. "You don't have to talk right now." Aaron shook his head. His hand grabbed Geoff's wrist. "I can't talk right now," Aaron said, tears filling his eyes. "Them." Geoff's jaw tightened. He understood. Aaron did not want them to stop. He did not want Mary's family to scare them into silence. He wanted the case. He wanted justice. Geoff bent down beside him. "You want us to fight them?" Geoff asked. Aaron's mouth trembled. He nodded. Frank wiped his face and looked away, trying not to break down in front of him. Geoff put the phone back to his ear. "Rebecca," he said, his voice low and steady, "Aaron wants the case. He can barely talk, but he wants it, so we are doing this." Rebecca went quiet for a second. Then she said, "Then bring him to the meeting." Frank looked at Geoff like she had lost her mind. "No," Frank said, "he just had a seizure." Rebecca heard him through the phone. "I know," she said, "but if Aaron is able to be there safely, even just sitting there, that retired judge needs to see what they did to him. He needs to see the damage, not on paper, in person." Geoff looked down at Aaron. Aaron's breathing was uneven, but his eyes stayed locked on Geoff. He nodded again. Geoff sighed. "Aaron, you sure?" Geoff asked. Aaron forced the words out. "I go." Frank shook his head. "Aaron." Aaron looked at Frank. "Please." That one word broke Frank. Frank dropped his head and covered his face with his hand. "Damn it," Frank whispered. Okay, we'll go." Geoff turned back to the phone. "We'll bring him," Geoff said, "but if he gets worse, we leave." "Agreed," Rebecca said. "I'll text you the address. Come through the back entrance. Do not tell anyone where you are going." Geoff's eyes hardened. "Because of Mary." "Because if Mary finds out before we have protection in place, she may try to move first." Frank stood up fast. "What does that mean?" Rebecca's voice became serious. "It means you need to treat tonight like Mary's family is already watching." The room went silent. Aaron's hand started shaking. Geoff grabbed it. "Hey," Geoff said quickly, "look at me, you're safe right now." Aaron's eyes filled with panic. Frank knelt in front of him. "Aaron, breathe with me," Frank said. "In and out, slow, you're not alone." Aaron tried to follow Frank's breathing. Geoff stayed beside him, one hand on his shoulder, the other still holding the phone. Rebecca said, "Geoff, listen to me carefully. Pack his medication, water, anything he needs if this turns into a long night. Bring the written statement. Even the ripped pieces if you still have them. Bring any video, photos, texts, names of officers, everything." Geoff looked toward the kitchen table. The ripped statement was still there in a plastic bag Frank had grabbed after Mary destroyed it. "We have the statement," Geoff said. "Frank saved it." "Good," Rebecca said. "That may matter more than you think." Frank looked at the plastic bag on the table. She ripped it up right in front of us, he said, like the law was nothing. Rebecca said, then we show that to the judge. Aaron whispered, Davis. Geoff looked down at him. Officer Davis, Geoff asked. Aaron nodded. Fired. Frank's eyes narrowed. Mary fired him after he tried to help, Frank said. She said he was done. Rebecca said, write that down, all of it, every threat, every name, every word you remember. Geoff looked at Frank. Get a notebook. Frank moved fast, grabbing a notebook from the counter. Geoff spoke slowly while Frank wrote. Mary came into the house with officers. She ripped up the written statement. She said Officer Davis was fired. She told us to keep her family's names out of our mouths. Then she came back with more officers and ordered them to take us away. Aaron squeezed Geoff's hand. Geoff looked at him. Aaron struggled to speak again. Scared me. Geoff's voice cracked. I know, brothers. Aaron cried harder. Body stopped. Frank stopped writing for a second. His hand shook over the page. Geoff swallowed his anger. Rebecca, he said, write this down too. Aaron said Mary scared him so badly his body stopped. Rebecca's voice softened. I wrote it down. Aaron closed his eyes, exhausted. Geoff brushed his hair back from his forehead. You did good, Geoff whispered. You said enough. Aaron's lips moved again. Don't let them win. Geoff leaned closer. I won't. Frank looked at Aaron and said, we won't. The phone buzzed. Rebecca had sent the address. Geoff read it, then looked at Frank. It's 30 minutes away. Frank nodded. I'll get the van ready. Geoff looked back at Aaron. We're going to move slow, he said. No rushing, no panic. We get you in the van, we meet Rebecca, and we talk to this judge. Aaron gave a weak nod. Frank grabbed Aaron's bag and packed everything Rebecca had asked for. Medication, water, the plastic bag with the ripped statement, their written notes. Frank even grabbed Aaron's blanket from the couch because he knew Aaron always calmed down with it. Geoff stayed with Aaron the whole time. Aaron looked at him and whispered, you came back. Geoff's eyes filled with guilt. Yeah, he said, and I should have come back sooner. Aaron's lip trembled. Needed you. Geoff nodded, tears falling now. I know, he said. I know, Aaron, I'm sorry, I was scared and I made the wrong choice, but I'm here now. Aaron's hand lifted just enough to touch Geoff's arm. Stay. Geoff took his hand. I'm staying. Frank came back into the room. Van ready. Geoff nodded. Together, he and Frank helped Aaron sit up slowly. Aaron's body shook from exhaustion, but he kept trying. Every movement was hard, but he refused to back down. When they got him into the van, Frank climbed into the back beside him. Geoff got in the driver's seat. Before starting the engine, he looked in the mirror. Aaron was wrapped in his blanket, leaning against Frank, his eyes tired but determined. Frank looked up. Let's go get our judge, Frank said. Geoff started the van. For the first time all night, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt the beginning of a fight. Geoff pulled the van into the back lot of the old courthouse building and parked near the side entrance Rebecca had told them to use. For a second, nobody moved. The building looked quiet from the outside, but the silence made it feel even heavier. This was the first real step, the first time someone with power might actually listen. Aaron sat in the back, wrapped in his blanket, breathing slowly. His eyes moved from the door to Frank, then to Geoff. His face tightened. Fuck life, Aaron muttered, his voice still broken. I need change before go in. Frank looked at him right away. I will change you, Frank said calmly. Aaron looked embarrassed and angry at the same time. Not now. I know, Frank said, but we're not going in with you uncomfortable, we'll handle it. Geoff turned around from the driver's seat. Aaron, it's okay, he said, we have time. Aaron shook his head, tears building in his eyes. Judge waiting. Frank reached for the bag. Then the judge can wait 2 more minutes, he said, you come first. That made Aaron go quiet. Frank moved carefully, keeping his voice low and steady so Aaron would not feel rushed. Geoff stepped outside and stood near the van door, blocking the view from the parking lot and watching for anyone who might come close. Inside, Frank helped Aaron as gently as he could. You're okay, Frank said, just breathe, I got you. Aaron stared at the ceiling of the van, his jaw tight. I hate this. I know, Frank said. No, Aaron whispered, I hate them made worse. Frank paused. He looked at Aaron and his face softened. They did not make you weak, Frank said, they hurt you, that's different. Aaron swallowed hard. Can't talk right, need changed, need help, judge see me like this. Frank finished helping him get cleaned up and comfortable, then pulled the blanket back over him. Then the judge will see the truth, Frank said. He will see what they did to a man who was already fighting hard every day. That is not shame on you, that is shame on them. Aaron blinked fast, trying not to cry. Geoff opened the side door slightly. You good? He asked. Frank nodded. Yeah, we're ready. Aaron looked at Geoff. Sorry. Geoff's face changed instantly. No, Geoff said, do not apologize, not for this, not tonight. Aaron's voice shook. I'm tired. Geoff climbed back into the van and crouched in front of him. I know you are, he said, but you already did the hardest part. You said you wanted the case. Now Frank and I carry the rest with you. Frank zipped the bag and put it over his shoulder. Together, Frank said. Aaron nodded weakly. Geoff helped open the ramp and Frank stayed close as Aaron's chair came down from the van. The cold night air hit them all at once. Aaron looked at the courthouse door. His breathing got faster. Frank placed a hand on his shoulder. Look at me, Frank said, not the door, me. Aaron turned his eyes to him. Frank spoke slowly. You are not walking into a fight alone. Geoff is here, I'm here. Rebecca is inside, and if this judge has any backbone at all, he is going to listen. Aaron whispered, what if no? Geoff stepped beside him. Then we find the next one, Geoff said, and the next one after that, but we do not quit. Aaron looked between both of them. For the first time since the seizure, a little bit of strength came back into his face. Case, he said. Frank nodded. Case. Geoff pressed the call button near the side entrance. A few seconds later, the door opened. Rebecca stood there in a dark coat, her face serious but relieved. You made it, she said. Geoff nodded. Barely. Rebecca looked past him and saw Aaron in the chair. Her expression changed when she saw how exhausted he looked, how hard he was fighting just to stay present. She walked toward him slowly. Aaron, she said, I know you have been through hell tonight. I know talking is hard right now, so you do not have to explain everything. Frank and Geoff can speak. You only speak if you want to. Aaron looked up at her. His mouth trembled. I want Case. Rebecca's eyes filled with emotion, but she held herself together. Then we fight, she said. Frank tightened his grip on the bag with the ripped statement inside. Rebecca glanced at it. You brought the evidence. Frank nodded. Everything we had. Good, Rebecca said, the judge is inside. Geoff looked past her into the dim hallway. What kind of judge is he? Rebecca took a breath. The kind Mary's family hoped was gone for good. That made Geoff's eyes narrow. Rebecca stepped aside. Come on, let's make sure they regret touching your brother. Frank moved beside Aaron's chair. You ready? He asked softly. Aaron stared down the hallway. His voice came out broken, but clear enough for all of them to understand. Make them hear. Geoff looked at Frank. Frank looked at Rebecca. Then they walked inside together. The room inside the old courthouse felt colder than the parking lot. Aaron sat in his chair with his blanket pulled around him. Frank stood close on one side, Geoff on the other. Rebecca walked ahead of them, holding her folder tight against her chest. At the end of the room sat the retired judge. He was older with gray hair and tired eyes, but when he looked up at them, there was nothing weak about him. His stare went from Rebecca to Geoff, then Frank, then finally to Aaron. He saw the blanket. He saw Aaron's shaking hand. He saw the way Aaron tried to sit strong even though his body was exhausted. The judge leaned back in his chair. Rebecca, he said, facts on this case, go. Rebecca nodded and stepped forward. Yes, Judge. Geoff held his breath. Frank's hand tightened on the bag with the ripped statement inside. Rebecca opened her folder. This started when Mary and members connected to her family used their power to intimidate Aaron, Geoff, and Frank inside Aaron's home, Rebecca said. Aaron has a traumatic brain injury. He is medically vulnerable, and tonight he suffered a severe seizure after Mary's confrontation. The judge looked at Aaron again. Aaron, the judge said, you do not have to speak unless you want to. I understand Rebecca is presenting for you. Aaron swallowed hard. His mouth moved slowly. I want case. The judge's face changed slightly. He nodded once. Understood. Rebecca continued. Mary entered the home with officers. A written statement had been taken by Officer Davis. Mary ripped that statement up in front of them. Frank pulled the plastic bag from the evidence bag and placed it on the table. Inside were the torn pieces of paper. The judge leaned forward. She destroyed a statement. Yes, Rebecca said, in front of witnesses. The judge's eyes hardened. Names. Rebecca looked at her notes. Mary, Officer Davis, Geoff, Frank, Aaron. There were additional officers present and we are still identifying all of them. The judge pointed at the plastic bag. That statement was police evidence once it was written. Yes, Judge. And she ripped it up. Yes. The judge's jaw tightened. Continue. Rebecca turned the page. After tearing up the statement, Mary told them to keep her family's names out of their mouths. She then said Officer Davis was fired. The judge looked up sharply. She said that. Frank stepped forward. She did, Frank said, right in front of us. Officer Davis tried to do the right thing and she acted like she had the power to end his career on the spot. The judge looked at Frank. And who are you to Aaron? Frank glanced down at Aaron. I'm family, Frank said. Not by blood, but I've been the one here. I was there when Aaron had the seizure. I was there when he was crying that he needed Geoff. I was there when his words stopped coming out right. Aaron's eyes filled with tears. Geoff put a hand on Aaron's shoulder. The judge nodded for Rebecca to continue. Rebecca said Mary later returned with approximately 30 officers and ordered them to take Geoff, Frank, Aaron, and a child away. The judge's face went still. A child. Yes, Rebecca said, we are still confirming the full details on that part, but Geoff reported that Mary gave the order herself. The judge looked at Geoff. Did she? Geoff stepped forward. Yes, sir, she came back like she owned the whole department. She pointed at us and told officers to take us away. Aaron was already scared, he was already falling apart, then he had the seizure. The judge looked back at Aaron. Aaron tried to speak again, but the words tangled in his throat. They us scared. Frank moved closer. Take your time, Frank whispered. Aaron clenched his hand on the armrest. They scared me bad. The room went silent. The judge did not interrupt him. Aaron took a shaky breath. I can't talk right now because them. Geoff looked down, fighting tears. Rebecca's voice softened. Judge, before tonight, Aaron could speak more clearly. After the seizure, his speech has been significantly affected. The judge folded his hands together. Medical records. Not yet, Rebecca said. This happened tonight, but Geoff and Frank are prepared to take him for evaluation after this meeting. You will do that immediately, the judge said. No delay, I want medical documentation from tonight. Geoff nodded fast. Yes, sir. The judge turned back to Rebecca. What are you asking for? Rebecca stood straighter. Emergency protection? A preservation order for all body camera footage, police dispatch logs, officer communications, and any report connected to the incident. I also want a path to file without the case being buried by Mary's family. The judge stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the torn statement. Then he looked at Aaron. Rebecca, he said, you came here because no sitting judge will touch this family. Yes. And you believe Mary's family has enough power to interfere with local law enforcement? Yes. The judge looked at Frank. You believe that too? Frank nodded. I watched it happen. The judge looked at Geoff. And you? Geoff's voice was low. My brother almost died because everyone is scared of them, so yes, I believe it. The judge leaned back. For a moment nobody breathed. Then the judge reached for a pen. Here is what we are going to do, he said. Rebecca, tonight you draft an emergency petition. You include Aaron's medical condition, the seizure, the destroyed statement, the alleged intimidation, the officers involved, and Mary's direct threats. Rebecca nodded quickly. Yes, Judge. You will also request immediate preservation of all evidence. Body cameras, dash cameras, dispatch audio, security footage, phone records, every report filed or deleted. Rebecca started writing. The judge looked at Geoff. "You three do not go back home alone tonight." Geoff blinked. "What?" "If Mary's family has already crossed this line," the judge said, "then you assume they will cross another one. You take Aaron to the hospital. You document the seizure and speech change. After that, you stay somewhere safe." Aaron's eyes widened. "Home." Frank crouched beside him. "Aaron will figure it out." Aaron shook his head. "My house." Geoff knelt down too. "I know, but right now safe comes first." Aaron's breathing started to speed up. The judge's voice became calmer. "Aaron." Aaron looked at him. The judge leaned forward. "This is not you running from them. This is us making sure you are alive and protected long enough to fight them." Aaron stared at him. His breathing slowed just a little. The judge continued. "If you want a case, then we do this right. We document everything. We protect you, then we go after them with facts, not fear." Aaron swallowed hard. "Facts," he whispered. The judge nodded. "Yes, facts." Rebecca closed her folder. "Judge, will you help us find someone willing to sign?" The judge picked up his phone. "I know one person who still remembers what the bench is supposed to mean." Geoff looked at Frank. Frank looked like he wanted to cry and scream at the same time. The judge dialed a number and waited. After a few seconds, someone answered. The judge's voice turned firm. "This is Judge Callahan. I need you awake and I need you listening. I have an emergency civil rights matter involving police intimidation, evidence destruction, and a medically vulnerable man who suffered a seizure after the incident." Rebecca's eyes widened. Geoff whispered, "Civil rights." Frank whispered back, "That's big." Aaron looked between them, confused but alert. Judge Callahan kept speaking into the phone. "No, I would not call you at this hour unless it mattered. And yes, it involves Mary's family." The room went silent again. The judge listened. Then his eyes narrowed. "I do not care who they know." He paused. "I said I do not care." Geoff felt something shift in the room. For the first time, somebody with power was not whispering Mary's name like a curse. The judge hung up and looked at Rebecca. "You have a judge." Rebecca froze. Geoff's mouth opened. Frank said, "What?" Judge Callahan stood. "You have a judge," he repeated, "but you have to move now. Hospital first, petition second, filing before morning." Aaron's face crumbled. He tried to speak, but only broken sounds came out. Frank grabbed his hand. "You did it," Frank said. "Aaron, you did it." Aaron cried hard. Geoff bent down and hugged him carefully. "You got your case," Geoff whispered. "You hear me, you got your case." Aaron shook in Geoff's arms. "Don't stop." Geoff pulled back and looked him in the eyes. "We won't." Rebecca wiped her face quickly and gathered the papers. Judge Callahan pointed toward the door. "Go in, Rebecca." She turned back. The judge's expression turned cold. "When you file this, do not soften the language. Do not protect Mary. Do not protect her family. Do not protect the officers who followed unlawful orders." Rebecca nodded. "I won't." The judge looked at Aaron one last time. "You wanted a case," he said. "Now survive long enough to win it." Aaron stared at him, tears still running down his face. Then he forced out one word. "Win." Before they left, Aaron sat in front of Judge Callahan, his hands shaking on the arms of his chair. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were sharp. He had been quiet for most of the meeting, letting Rebecca speak because every word still took too much effort. But now Aaron forced himself to talk. "My trust is gone," Aaron said slowly, "because Wendy and Rob got family member as judge." The room went still. Geoff looked at Frank. Frank's face tightened. Judge Callahan leaned forward. "What do you mean by that?" he asked. Aaron swallowed hard and looked at Rebecca. Rebecca nodded, understanding what he was trying to say. "Judge," Rebecca said, "Mary's kid sued Aaron for defamation. The judge on that case is connected to Mary's family." Judge Callahan's eyes narrowed. Rebecca continued, "That judge ruled for Mary's side without properly hearing the case. No real hearing, no fair chance for Aaron to answer, no meaningful review of the facts." Geoff stepped closer to Aaron's chair. Frank held the evidence bag tighter. Rebecca looked back at Aaron. And everyone but Mary is MIA, right, Aaron? Aaron nodded. Yo, he said. Judge Callahan sat back slowly. So Mary is the only one still actively showing herself, he said. Rebecca nodded. Yes, Wendy and Rob are not reachable. Other family members involved are missing or hiding behind lawyers, officers, or court connections, but Mary keeps appearing. She is the one making threats. She is the one showing up. She is the one acting like she controls the police. Frank could not hold back anymore. She does control them, Frank said, at least enough to scare them. Officer Davis tried to help and she fired him like she owned the department. Judge Callahan looked at Frank. Did Davis leave after that? Frank nodded. He looked scared, not embarrassed, scared. Aaron's face twisted with pain. He tried help. Rebecca looked at the judge. That matters. Officer Davis may be the only officer willing to speak if we can protect him. Judge Callahan tapped his pen against the table. Then he becomes a key witness. Geoff let out a shaky breath. But how do we trust any judge after what already happened? Geoff asked. Aaron's right, they already used family connections once. Aaron looked at Geoff, relieved that someone said it clearly. Judge Callahan did not get offended, he did not get angry. Instead, he looked directly at Aaron. You should not blindly trust the system after what happened to you, the judge said. Aaron blinked. Frank looked surprised. Judge Callahan continued, trust is not something courts are owed, it is something courts have to earn by being fair. If a judge ruled without hearing the case and if that judge had a family connection to one side, then that is not justice. That is corruption wearing a robe. Rebecca's eyes widened slightly. Geoff whispered, damn. Aaron stared at Judge Callahan. For the first time, someone in power said the word Aaron had been thinking. Corruption. Judge Callahan turned to Rebecca. I want that defamation case pulled apart, he said. Every filing, every order, every conflict, every family connection. If that judge was connected to Mary's family and did not recuse, we use it. Rebecca nodded. I already started collecting the paperwork. Good, Judge Callahan said, and this time nothing gets handled quietly. Aaron's hand moved toward Frank. Frank grabbed it. Aaron whispered, they make me look bad. Rebecca stepped closer. That is what defamation cases are sometimes used for, she said. Not always, but sometimes. They sue not because they are right, but because they want to scare someone into silence. Aaron's breathing picked up. They did, he said, they scare me. Geoff bent down beside him. I know. Aaron forced the words out harder. They scare me and now I can't talk. Frank's jaw clenched. Rebecca looked at Judge Callahan. That is why this is not just a defamation issue anymore, this is intimidation, abuse of process, possible police misconduct, evidence destruction, retaliation, and now medical harm after a confrontation with a vulnerable person. Judge Callahan nodded. That is the case. Geoff looked at him. So we don't just fight the defamation thing. No, Judge Callahan said, you fight the whole pattern. Aaron frowned, trying to follow. Rebecca turned to him gently. Aaron, listen to me, they tried to make this about you talking, they tried to call it defamation so they could say you were the problem, but now we show the bigger truth. We show how they used family power, police power, and court power to silence you. Aaron's eyes filled with tears again. Will Judge listen? Judge Callahan answered before Rebecca could. The judge I called will listen because I will be watching. The room went quiet. Judge Callahan's voice turned cold. And because if anyone tries to bury this case again, I will make noise they cannot ignore. Frank looked at Rebecca. Can he do that? Rebecca nodded. He still has influence, a lot of it. Judge Callahan looked at Aaron again. But Aaron, Rebecca is right, we need facts, dates, names, orders, medical records, police records, court records. Every time they touched this case, we document it. Aaron nodded slowly. Facts, he said again. Yes, Judge Callahan said, facts, not rumors, not fear, facts. Geoff pulled out his phone. I can make a timeline, he said. Everything that happened, when Mary came, when Officer Davis took the statement, when she ripped it up, when she came back with officers, when Aaron had the seizure. Rebecca said, do that tonight. Frank said, I'll write what I saw too. Judge Callahan pointed at both of them. Separate statements, do not write them together, do not copy each other's words, each of you writes what you personally saw and heard. Geoff nodded. Okay. Frank nodded too. Aaron looked upset. I can't write good now. Rebecca leaned down in front of him. You do not have to write it tonight. At the hospital, we document your speech change. Later, when you are medically safe, I can take your statement slowly. You can talk, type, point, or answer yes and no. We will not rush you. Aaron breathed out. Frank squeezed his hand. You hear that? No rushing. Aaron looked at Rebecca. Mary only one not hiding. Rebecca nodded. Yes. Aaron's face hardened. Then start with her. Geoff looked down at him. Frank's eyes widened. Judge Callahan stared at Aaron for a long moment. Then he nodded. That is exactly what we do. Rebecca closed her folder. We start with Mary, we connect her to the destroyed statement, the threats, the officers, the defamation case, and the family judge. Then we pull the others in when they stop hiding. Aaron's lips trembled, but he looked stronger. Good. Judge Callahan stood up. Then this meeting is over. Aaron goes to the hospital now. Rebecca drafts the emergency petition. Geoff and Frank write their statements separately. The torn statement stays sealed. No one talks to police without Rebecca present. Geoff nodded. Yes, Judge. Frank said, got it. Aaron looked at the judge. His voice came out broken but full of anger. Don't let family judge hurt me again. Judge Callahan's face softened, but his voice stayed firm. I cannot promise no one will try, he said, but I can promise this, they will not do it in the dark anymore. Aaron stared at him. Rebecca placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder. You are not crazy, she said, you are not making this up, what happened to you was wrong. Aaron closed his eyes and tears ran down his face. Geoff leaned close. You hear that, brothers? Aaron nodded. Frank wiped his own eyes and whispered, finally someone said it. Judge Callahan walked to the door and opened it. Move fast, he said, before Mary realizes the case is alive. Aaron looked at Geoff. Case alive. Geoff smiled through his tears. Yeah, Geoff said the case is alive. Aaron looked at Frank. Frank nodded. And so are you. Aaron took a shaky breath. For the first time that night, his fear did not disappear, but it had somewhere to go. Into the case. Into the facts. Into the fight. Rebecca stepped into the hallway first. Geoff pushed Aaron's chair forward. Frank stayed beside him with the evidence bag. And behind them, Judge Callahan watched from the doorway, already knowing one thing for sure. Mary's family had spent years making people disappear. But Aaron was still here. And now, he was coming after them with the truth. Aaron sat there with tears still on his face, staring at the floor like the whole room had become too heavy. He had fought to say he wanted the case. He had fought to get a judge. He had fought to stay awake, stay calm, and stay alive. But now the truth came out of him in broken words. I want my fuck money, Aaron said, his voice shaking, but I hate court, I don't do this again. Geoff's face softened. Frank looked down at him, heartbroken. Rebecca stepped closer, but she did not rush him. She knew Aaron was not refusing justice. He was exhausted. He was scared. He had already been hurt by the system once, and the thought of walking back into it felt like walking back into a fire. Aaron, Rebecca said gently, I hear you. Aaron shook his head, angry tears spilling again. No, he said, court hurt me, judge, family, they no listen, they make me bad guy. Frank crouched beside him. You are not the bad guy, Frank said. Aaron looked at him. They make me look bad. I know, Frank said, but that does not make it true. Aaron's hand tightened around the blanket. I want them pay, Aaron said, but I can't sit there while they lie. Geoff knelt on the other side of him. Then we do it different, Geoff said. Aaron looked at him confused. Geoff looked at Rebecca. Tell him, Geoff said, tell him he doesn't have to be thrown into court tomorrow like they did before. Rebecca nodded. Aaron, this does not start with you being dragged into a courtroom, she said. This starts with protection, medical records, evidence, statements, emergency filings. I do the legal fighting first. Aaron swallowed hard. You. Yes, Rebecca said, me, that is my job. Aaron's mouth trembled. But I have to go. Sometimes, maybe, Rebecca said honestly. But not every time, and when you do, you will not be alone. I can ask for accommodations because of your TBI, the seizure, and your speech problems. That means breaks, extra time, the ability to type or have support, and protection from being bullied during questioning. Judge Callahan nodded. She is right, he said. Court is supposed to make reasonable accommodations for a person's disability and medical needs. If someone tries to turn your condition against you, Rebecca objects. If a judge allows it, we make a record. If they violate your rights, that becomes part of the case too. Aaron breathed unevenly. I hate it, he whispered. Frank touched his arm. You're allowed to hate it. Aaron looked up. Frank's voice was low and steady. You can want your money and hate the fight, both can be true. Geoff nodded. They took your peace, he said. They took your trust, they made your body shut down. Wanting them to pay for that does not mean you have to pretend court is easy. Aaron wiped at his face with the back of his hand. I don't want them talk over me. Rebecca's face became serious. They will not get to talk over you without me standing up. Aaron looked at Judge Callahan. And family judge. Judge Callahan's eyes hardened. That gets challenged? If there was a conflict and that judge ruled without hearing the case properly, then Rebecca can attack that ruling. We expose the connection, we ask for review, we put pressure where it belongs. Aaron looked down again. My trust gone. Judge Callahan nodded. I know. Aaron blinked. The judge leaned forward. And I am not going to insult you by telling you to just trust the system. You have reason not to, so do not trust the system, trust your evidence, trust your lawyer, trust the people sitting beside you, and make the system prove itself every step of the way. Aaron sat with that for a moment. Trust the evidence. Trust Rebecca. Trust Geoff and Frank. Not the system. That felt different. Frank reached into the bag and pulled out the plastic evidence pouch with the ripped statement. Look at this, Frank said. Aaron looked at the torn paper. Frank held it up. She ripped it up because she wanted it gone, but it is still here. Geoff placed his hand on Aaron's shoulder. She scared you because she wanted you quiet, but you are still here. Rebecca lifted her folder. They used court to make you feel powerless, but now we are building the case the right way. Aaron stared at the ripped statement, and something in his face changed. His words still came out broken, but his anger became clearer than his fear. I want my money, he said. I want my name back. Rebecca nodded. Then that is what we fight for, damages, protection, and clearing your name. Aaron looked at her. No tricks. No tricks, Rebecca said. No alone. You will never be alone with them. No family judge. We challenge any conflict. Aaron breathed in slowly. And if I can't talk? Then you type, Rebecca said. Or you answer yes and no, or we pause. Your voice is still your voice even if it comes out different right now. That broke him. Aaron covered his face and cried. Geoff leaned in and hugged him carefully. I know, brother, Geoff whispered. I know you're tired. Aaron sobbed into Geoff's shoulder. I don't do this again. Geoff closed his eyes. You won't do it the way they made you do it before, he said. This time we do it with people protecting you. Frank stood behind Aaron's chair, one hand on his shoulder. This time they don't get to corner you. Rebecca gathered the papers and looked at Judge Callahan. I'll file for emergency protections and accommodations with the petition. Good, Judge Callahan said, and include a request that any prior defamation ruling involving the family-connected judge be reviewed for conflict and lack of due process. Rebecca nodded. I will. Aaron looked up slowly. Due process. Judge Callahan answered him. It means they have to hear you before they punish you. Aaron's face twisted with pain. They didn't. No, Judge Callahan said. From what Rebecca told me, they did not. Aaron's voice became small. That's why I scared. The room went quiet. Then Frank said, and that's why we're fighting. Aaron turned toward him. Frank held his gaze. Not because court is fun, not because this is easy, but because if they get away with it, they will keep doing it, to you, to someone else, to anyone they think they can break. Aaron wiped his face again. I don't want be broke. Geoff squeezed his shoulder. You're not broken. Aaron looked at him. Geoff's voice cracked. "You're hurt, there's a difference." Rebecca stepped toward the door. "We need to go hospital first, then I file." Aaron looked at Judge Callahan one more time. "Money," he said. Judge Callahan nodded. "Yes, money for what they did, but first proof, protection, medical records, evidence, that is how you get there." Aaron took a shaky breath. "Okay." Geoff bent down. "You sure?" Aaron looked tired, angry, scared, and determined all at once. "I hate court," he said. Frank nodded. "I know." Aaron looked at Rebecca. "But I want case." Rebecca gave him a firm nod. "Then I will carry the legal part until you are strong enough to carry your part." Aaron looked at Geoff and Frank. "You both stay." Geoff answered first. "I'm staying." Frank placed the evidence bag over his shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere." Aaron leaned back in his chair, exhausted. "Then go," he whispered, "before I change my mind." For the first time all night, Frank almost smiled. "That's our Aaron." Geoff pushed the chair toward the hallway. Rebecca walked ahead with the files. Frank stayed beside them with the evidence. Judge Callahan watched them leave, then looked down at the torn statement on the table. Mary's family had made Aaron hate court. They had made him fear judges. They had made him believe justice was something only powerful people could buy. But they had not taken everything. They had not taken his anger. They had not taken his truth. And they had not taken his right to fight back. When the next hearing began, Judge Callahan looked across the table at Mary's lawyer. His voice was calm, but the whole room could feel the danger behind it. "Where is Mary?" Mary's lawyer shifted in his seat and looked down at the folder in front of him. "I don't know," the lawyer said. "I haven't seen her in months." Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Geoff slowly turned his head toward Frank. Frank whispered, "Months." Aaron sat in his chair beside them, wrapped in his blanket, his face tired but alert. His speech was still broken, but he understood every word. Judge Callahan leaned back. "You represent her," he said. The lawyer swallowed. "I represented her in the earlier matter." Judge Callahan's stare sharpened. "That is not what I asked. Where is she?" "I don't know," the lawyer repeated. "She stopped answering calls, she stopped coming to meetings, I received no updated address, no instructions, nothing." Rebecca stepped forward. "Judge, that is convenient." Mary's lawyer looked at her. "It is also true." Judge Callahan tapped his pen once against the table. "So Mary appeared in Aaron's home, allegedly threatened him, destroyed a written statement, claimed authority over an officer's job, returned with officers, caused this man to suffer a severe medical episode, and now she has vanished." The lawyer said nothing. Aaron's breathing grew heavier. Frank touched his shoulder. "Easy," Frank whispered, "we're here." Aaron forced the words out. "She hiding." The room went quiet. Judge Callahan looked at Aaron. "Say that again if you can." Aaron clenched his jaw and tried. "She hiding." Rebecca nodded. "That is our position, Judge. Everyone connected to Mary suddenly disappears when the case becomes real. Wendy and Rob are missing. Other family members are unreachable. And now Mary's own lawyer claims he has not seen her in months." Mary's lawyer raised his hands. "I am not claiming anything. I am telling the court I do not know where my client is." Judge Callahan leaned forward. "Then you have a serious problem." The lawyer stiffened. "Judge." "No," Callahan said. "Your client used the legal system when it benefited her family. She used police presence when it benefited her family. She used intimidation when it benefited her family. Now that questions are being asked under oath, she disappears." Rebecca placed a folder on the table. "We are requesting immediate service attempts at every known address, preservation of all communications, and permission to subpoena phone records, officer logs, and prior court filings connected to Mary and her family." Mary's lawyer shook his head. "That is too broad." Frank snapped. "Too broad. Aaron can barely talk because of what happened." Geoff put a hand out. "Frank." Frank backed up, breathing hard. Aaron looked at Frank and whispered, "It okay?" Frank looked down at him, pained. "No, it's not." Judge Callahan raised his hand and the room settled. "Rebecca," he said, "your request is granted in part for now. Start with known addresses, phone records tied to the incident window, police communications, and the defamation matter. If those records show a wider pattern, you may expand. Rebecca nodded. Yes, Judge. Mary's lawyer looked frustrated. Judge, I object to the implication that my client is intentionally avoiding this. Judge Callahan stared at him. Then produce her. The lawyer went silent. Judge Callahan's voice lowered. If you cannot produce her, do not stand here and ask me to pretend her absence means nothing. Aaron's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Rebecca. Can they still do case? Rebecca turned to him gently. Yes, her hiding does not stop the case, it may actually hurt her. Aaron blinked. Hurt her? Judge Callahan answered. If Mary refuses to appear, ignores orders, or avoids service, the court can take action. But first, we document every attempt to find her. Aaron looked down at his hands. I don't want Chase forever. Geoff crouched beside him. We won't let this become forever. Frank nodded. We keep moving. Rebecca looked at Judge Callahan. There is another issue. If Mary's lawyer has not seen her in months, then who has been giving instructions in matters connected to Aaron? Mary's lawyer's face changed. Judge Callahan noticed. So Callahan said that is the question. Rebecca continued, was Mary acting alone, or was someone else using her name, her influence, and her family connections to keep pressure on Aaron? Aaron's head lifted. Geoff whispered Wendy and Rob. Frank's jaw tightened. Judge Callahan looked at Mary's lawyer. You will provide a privilege log for every non-privileged communication related to scheduling, filings, court contacts, and police contact involving this matter. The lawyer protested, Judge, attorney-client privilege. I said non-privileged, Callahan cut in. And if you claim privilege over everything, Rebecca may challenge it. I will review what needs reviewing. Rebecca closed her folder. Thank you, Judge. Aaron stared at the empty chair where Mary should have been. His face hardened. She came my house, he said slowly. Now scared, come here. Frank's eyes widened slightly. Geoff looked at Aaron with pride. Judge Callahan nodded. That may be true. Aaron's voice shook, but he kept going. She brave with cops, not brave with facts. The room went completely silent. Rebecca's face softened. Frank whispered, damn right. Geoff placed his hand on Aaron's shoulder. Judge Callahan looked at Aaron for a long moment. Then he said, that statement goes in the record. Aaron blinked, surprised. My words. Yes, Callahan said, your words. Aaron swallowed hard. For the first time, court did not feel like it was only stealing his voice. For the first time, someone in that room was writing his words down because they mattered. Mary's lawyer sat back, pale and tense. Rebecca looked at him. So I'll ask it plainly, she said, do you know where Mary is? The lawyer looked at Judge Callahan, then Rebecca, then finally Aaron. No, he said quietly, I don't. Judge Callahan picked up his pen again. Then we find her. Aaron looked at Geoff. Geoff leaned close. You hear that? Aaron nodded. Frank stood beside him, eyes locked on Mary's empty chair. Rebecca gathered her papers. Judge Callahan looked at everyone in the room. Mary wanted power when Aaron was alone in his house. Now she will answer in a courtroom with witnesses, records, and consequences. Aaron took a shaky breath. Good, he whispered. Judge Callahan's voice turned firm. Next hearing date will be set immediately. If Mary is not found, we proceed with every lawful tool available. The gavel came down. And the empty chair where Mary should have been suddenly looked less like power. It looked like fear. Aaron stared at Mary's lawyer like he could see right through him. His hands shook on the arms of his chair. His body was tired, his speech still broken, but the anger in his face was clear. Bullshit, Aaron said. Everyone looked at him. Aaron leaned forward slightly, his voice rough and uneven. This guy bullshit. Mary's lawyer's face tightened. Judge, I object to being personally attacked by. Rebecca lifted her hand before he could finish. Aaron, she said calmly, I got this. Aaron looked at her, breathing hard. Rebecca stepped in front of Aaron's chair just enough to shield him from the lawyer's stare. Then she turned back to Judge Callahan. Judge, my client's frustration is understandable. Mary's lawyer claims he has not seen or heard from her in months, yet filings and pressure connected to this family continued. Someone was moving pieces, someone was keeping the threat alive. So either he knows more than he is saying or someone else has been acting through Mary's name. Mary's lawyer sat up straighter. That is speculation. Rebecca nodded once. It is a question, and discovery is how we answer questions. Judge Callahan looked at Mary's lawyer. She is right. The lawyer swallowed. Judge, I have told you what I know. Rebecca opened another folder and pulled out copies of court papers. Then explain this. She placed the documents on the table. This filing was submitted after the date you claim you stopped receiving instructions from Mary. The lawyer's eyes moved to the page. His face changed for half a second. Frank noticed it. Geoff noticed it. Aaron noticed it too. Aaron pointed weakly at him. See, Aaron said, bullshit. Rebecca did not turn around, but her voice stayed steady. Aaron, let me handle him. Aaron sat back, still glaring. Rebecca looked at the lawyer. Who authorized that filing? The lawyer cleared his throat. I would need to review my records. Rebecca placed another page down. And this one? The lawyer said nothing. Rebecca placed down another. And this one? Judge Callahan leaned forward. Counselor, answer the question. Mary's lawyer shifted again. I received communication from a family representative. The room went cold. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. A family representative. Yes. Name. I would have to confirm. Judge Callahan cut him off. Number, name. The lawyer hesitated. Aaron's breathing grew faster. Frank bent down beside him. Easy, Aaron, Rebecca's got him. Geoff stood behind Aaron's chair, his hand on his brother's shoulder. Mary's lawyer finally spoke. Rob. Aaron's eyes went wide. Geoff whispered, there it is. Rebecca stepped closer to the table. Rob gave you instructions for Mary's case. He contacted me regarding family concerns. That is not what I asked, Rebecca said. Did Rob give you instructions connected to legal action against Aaron? The lawyer looked at Judge Callahan. Judge Callahan did not look away. Finally, the lawyer said, yes. Aaron's face twisted with rage. Rob hiding too? Rebecca nodded. Yes, Aaron, and now we have him connected. Frank whispered, good. Rebecca turned back to the lawyer. So when you said you did not know where Mary was, that may be true, but you failed to mention that Rob was still communicating with you. Mary's lawyer looked cornered. I was not asked about Rob. Judge Callahan's voice became sharp. You were asked who was involved. Do not play games in my courtroom. The lawyer went quiet. Rebecca picked up the filings. Judge, this confirms what Aaron has been saying. Mary may be the face of the intimidation, but Rob is still moving behind the scenes. That means Mary is not just missing, she may be being protected. Aaron's voice shook. They all protect each other. Rebecca turned to him. Yes, she said, but every time they protect each other, they leave a trail. Aaron looked at her. A trail. Rebecca held up the papers. Paperwork, calls, emails, officer logs, court filings. They thought power made them invisible, it didn't. Judge Callahan looked at Mary's lawyer. You will preserve every communication with Rob, Wendy, Mary, and anyone acting on behalf of that family. Emails, texts, voicemails, call logs, letters, billing records, everything. The lawyer nodded stiffly. Yes, Judge. And if anything disappears, Judge Callahan said, you will have a much bigger problem than this hearing. Aaron stared at the lawyer, tears in his eyes but anger holding him upright. He lied, Aaron said. Rebecca looked at Aaron gently. He tried to leave out the truth, she said, but we caught it. Aaron swallowed hard. Frank squeezed his shoulder. You were right, Frank whispered, you called it. Geoff leaned down. You said bullshit and you were right. Aaron's mouth trembled. For a second the anger faded and the pain underneath showed. I hate this. Rebecca walked back to him and crouched in front of his chair. I know, she said, but you did good, you listened, you saw the hole in his story, and now Rob's name is on the record. Aaron blinked. On record. Rebecca nodded. On the record. Aaron looked toward Judge Callahan. Judge Callahan gave a firm nod. Yes, Aaron, Rob is now part of the record. Aaron breathed out slowly. Mary's lawyer looked down at the table, no longer pretending to be confident. Rebecca stood again. Judge, based on this admission, we request subpoenas for Rob's communications and any records showing his involvement in the prior defamation action, police contact, or attempts to locate or shield Mary. Judge Callahan picked up his pen. Granted. The gavel came down. Aaron flinched slightly, but Frank steadied him. Rebecca turned back to Aaron. You see, she said softly, I told you I had this. Aaron looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Yeah, he whispered, you got him. Rebecca's face stayed serious, but her eyes softened. No, she said, you got him started, I just finished the question. Geoff smiled a little through the stress. Frank let out a shaky breath. Aaron looked at the empty chair where Mary should have been, then at the lawyer who had just exposed Rob without meaning to. His voice came out broken, but stronger than before. Find all them. Judge Callahan looked over the room. We will. And for the first time, Mary's family was not just a name people were afraid to say. They were names in a court record. Mary. Rob. Wendy. And the list was only beginning. The courtroom doors slammed open so hard that everyone turned. Wendy pushed herself into the courtroom in her power chair, her face twisted with rage. Her eyes went straight to Mary's lawyer. Matt, you are fired, you dumb motherfucker, Wendy snapped. Matt went pale. Rebecca slowly turned toward her. Aaron froze in his chair. Geoff stepped closer to Aaron, and Frank's hand went right to Aaron's shoulder. Judge Callahan's eyes narrowed. Who are you? He asked. Wendy ignored him. She rolled past Matt like he was nothing, then stopped in the middle of the courtroom. Matt stood up fast. Wendy, don't. Shut up, Wendy said, you already talk too much. Then Wendy did something that made the whole room go silent. She grabbed the arms of her power chair, pushed herself up and stood. Aaron's eyes widened. Frank whispered, what the hell? Geoff stared in disbelief as Wendy stepped away from the chair and walked toward the bench. Wendy lifted her chin. I am representing my family now, she said. Judge Callahan stood slowly. No, you are not. Wendy stopped. The room went colder. Judge Callahan's voice dropped. You will not walk into my courtroom, fire counsel in the middle of a hearing, threaten people, and announce yourself as representation without authority. Wendy laughed. Authority, you don't know who my family is. Rebecca stepped forward. Actually, Judge, I think she just confirmed exactly what this case is about. Wendy snapped her head toward Rebecca. You keep your mouth shut. Aaron flinched. Frank immediately leaned down. Aaron, look at me, don't look at her. Aaron's breathing started to shake. Wendy pointed at Aaron. And you, she said, you should have stayed quiet. Geoff exploded. Do not talk to him. Judge Callahan slammed his gavel. Enough. The sound cracked through the room. Everyone went silent. Judge Callahan pointed at Wendy. You will not threaten Aaron in this courtroom. Wendy smirked. That wasn't a threat. Rebecca's voice was ice cold. It was intimidation in open court, directed at a medically vulnerable witness and plaintiff. Judge Callahan looked at the court reporter. Make sure that is in the record. The court reporter nodded. Aaron's hands shook hard now. He forced himself to speak. She does this. Rebecca turned back to him. I know. Aaron looked at the judge, tears forming. She does this to people. Judge Callahan nodded once. And now she did it in front of me. Wendy's smirk faded. Matt stepped away from her like he wanted distance from the fire she had just started. Rebecca looked at him. Matt, for the record, was Wendy the family representative who instructed you to. Matt swallowed. Wendy turned on him. Don't you dare. Judge Callahan's voice cut through the room. Answer the question. Matt looked like he wanted the floor to open under him. Yes, he said quietly. Rebecca stepped closer. Wendy instructed you. Yes. And Rob. Yes. And Mary. Matt hesitated. Rebecca's eyes sharpened. Did Mary personally instruct you, or were Wendy and Rob using Mary's name? Matt looked down. Wendy shouted, you are fired. Judge Callahan slammed the gavel again. Wendy, one more outburst and you will be removed. Wendy pointed at him. You don't scare me. Judge Callahan's face went hard. No, but the record should. For the first time, Wendy looked uncertain. Rebecca looked back at Aaron. You were right, they were all protecting each other. Aaron's eyes stayed on Wendy. His voice came out broken but clear enough. She fake. Wendy's face changed. What did you say? Aaron swallowed hard. You fake. Frank whispered Aaron easy. But Aaron kept going. You come in chair then walk, you lie about everything. Wendy's face burned red. Geoff looked at the judge. Judge, she just walked across the courtroom after pushing herself in like she needed that chair. I don't know what that means, but it's another thing they staged. Rebecca nodded. We are requesting that Wendy be added for questioning under oath. Wendy laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. I don't answer to you. Judge Callahan sat back down slowly. You answer to this court. Wendy's eyes locked on him. I told you I represent my family. No, Judge Callahan said, you represent a problem. The courtroom went silent. Rebecca stepped to the table. Judge, Wendy entered this courtroom, fired counsel, threatened Aaron, admitted through conduct that she is directing this family's legal strategy and attempted to take control of the proceeding. This supports our request for expanded discovery and protective orders. Granted, Judge Callahan said. Wendy's mouth dropped open. Rebecca continued, I also request that Wendy be ordered not to contact Aaron, Geoff, Frank, or any witness directly or indirectly. Granted. Wendy stepped toward the bench. You can't do that. Judge Callahan looked at the bailiff. Do not let her come any closer. The bailiff moved between Wendy and the bench. Aaron watched it happen, shaking but awake. For once, Wendy did not get to walk into a room and own it. For once, someone stopped her. Frank leaned down and whispered, You see that, she can't touch you here. Aaron cried quietly. She always win. Geoff crouched beside him. Not today. Wendy turned toward Aaron again, but the bailiff blocked her path. Judge Callahan's voice filled the room. Wendy, you will sit down, remain silent unless questioned, and comply with every order of this court, or you will be removed and sanctioned. Wendy's hands curled into fists. Matt sat back down looking destroyed. Rebecca looked at him one more time. Matt, we will be requesting every communication from Wendy, Rob, and Mary. Matt nodded weakly. I understand. Wendy shouted, You better not. Judge Callahan pointed at the bailiff. Remove her. The bailiff stepped forward. Wendy tried to argue, but now everyone had seen the truth. She was not untouchable. She was not in control. She was just loud. As the bailiff escorted Wendy away from the bench, Aaron looked at Rebecca. She's scared now. Rebecca looked at Wendy, then back at Aaron. Yes, she said, because now she is on the record. Aaron breathed out slowly. Frank squeezed his shoulder. Geoff wiped his face. Judge Callahan looked over the courtroom. Let the record reflect that Wendy entered this courtroom, attempted to interfere with the proceeding, threatened Aaron, and identified herself as representing the family. Rebecca nodded. That record is going to matter. Aaron stared at Wendy as she was led back toward the doors. His voice was broken, but it carried. Facts. Judge Callahan looked at him. Yes, Aaron, he said, facts. And this time, the facts were walking right out of the courtroom in handcuffs. The courtroom doors had barely closed behind Wendy when another voice came from the back. Sam Callahan. Judge Callahan went still. Everyone turned. Rod stood near the doorway, dressed like he had walked in, expecting everyone to move out of his way. His face was calm, but his eyes were full of poison. Rebecca slowly turned her body toward him. Geoff moved closer to Aaron. Frank whispered, Aaron, don't look at him. But Aaron already was. Rod smiled at the judge. Sam Callahan, Rod said again, if you want your wife to know that you have a love child, I recommend you step down from this case. The whole courtroom froze. Even Matt looked scared now. Rebecca's eyes widened, then hardened. Geoff whispered, did he just threaten the judge? Frank's jaw clenched. Aaron gripped the arms of his chair. Judge Callahan did not move. For a long second, he only stared at Rod. Then he leaned toward the microphone. Let the record reflect that Rod has entered this courtroom and attempted to blackmail the court in open session. Rod's smile faded. Rebecca stepped forward immediately. Judge, I am requesting that Rod be added to the protective order and that this be treated as direct intimidation of the court. Granted, Judge Callahan said. Rod pointed at him. You think I'm playing? Judge Callahan's face stayed cold. No, I think you're confessing. Rod blinked. Rebecca turned to the court reporter. Please make sure the exact words are captured. The court reporter nodded. Rod took one step forward. I said step down. The bailiff moved between Rod and the aisle. Judge Callahan stood. And I said you just made the worst mistake of your life. Aaron's breathing started getting fast. Frank crouched beside him. Aaron, breathe, he can't touch you. Aaron's voice came out broken and scared. They do this. Rebecca looked at him. Yes, she said, and now they did it in front of a judge, a court reporter, lawyers, and officers. Aaron shook, tears forming. They threaten everyone. Judge Callahan looked directly at Aaron. They threat the wrong room today. Rod laughed, but it sounded nervous. You really want to do this, Sam? Judge Callahan picked up his pen. My name is Judge Callahan in this courtroom, and yes, I really want to do this. Rod's eyes narrowed. You step down or your family gets destroyed. Rebecca snapped, that is another threat, Judge. Judge Callahan nodded. Entered into the record. Rod looked around, realizing too late that nobody was backing down. Matt put his head in his hands. Wendy was gone. Mary was missing. And now Rod had walked in and exposed exactly how the family worked. Threats. Secrets. Fear. Pressure. Aaron stared at Rod with tears in his eyes. His voice shook, but he forced the words out. You prove me right. Rod looked at him. What? Aaron swallowed hard. You prove me right. The courtroom went silent again. Geoff looked down at Aaron with pride. Frank whispered, that's right. Rebecca stepped closer to Aaron's chair. Aaron is correct, she said. Rod just demonstrated the same pattern we have been describing from the beginning. When the family feels control slipping, they threaten, intimidate, and try to force people out of the way. Rod snapped, shut him up. Judge Callahan slammed the gavel. No, you do not give orders here. Rod pointed at Aaron. He doesn't even know what he's saying. Aaron flinched. Geoff stepped forward, furious. He knows exactly what he's saying. Frank stood too. You don't get to talk about him like that. Rebecca raised her hand. Geoff, Frank, let me. She turned back to Rod. You just insulted my client's disability in open court after threatening the judge. Thank you for making the pattern clearer. Rod's face turned red. Judge Callahan looked at the bailiff. Rod is not to leave until his identity and contact information are recorded. If he refuses, detain him. Rod's confidence cracked. You can't detain me. Judge Callahan leaned forward. You walked into a courtroom and threatened a sitting judicial proceeding. Try me. The bailiff stepped closer. Rod looked toward Matt. Matt would not look at him. Rebecca placed another folder on the table. Judge, based on Rod's conduct, we request immediate expansion of subpoenas to include Rod's communications with Wendy, Mary, Rob, Matt, and any law enforcement contact related to Aaron. Granted, Judge Callahan said. Rod shouted, you're making a mistake. Judge Callahan's voice was steady. No, you made it for me. Aaron started crying quietly. Geoff bent down beside him. What is it? Aaron tried to speak, but the words tangled. Frank touched his shoulder. Take your time. Aaron looked at Judge Callahan. They got something on everyone. Judge Callahan's expression changed, but he did not look ashamed. He looked angry. Maybe they thought they did, he said, but the difference between guilt and fear is whether you let someone use it to hurt other people. Rod's face went pale. Judge Callahan looked at Rebecca. For the record, if there is any personal matter being used to threaten this court, I will disclose what is legally required to the proper authority. I will not step down because a party attempted blackmail. Rebecca nodded. Understood, Judge. Aaron stared at him. You not scared? Judge Callahan looked at Aaron. I am human, he said, but I am not theirs. Those words hit Aaron hard. He lowered his head and cried. Geoff put both hands on the back of Aaron's chair. Frank stood beside him, eyes wet. Rebecca looked at Rod. You came here to scare him, she said. Instead, you gave us the clearest evidence yet. Rod tried to speak, but nothing came out. Judge Callahan pointed toward the side wall. Rod, sit down, you are now part of this record. Rod looked like he wanted to fight, but the bailiff was already there. Slowly Rod sat. Aaron wiped his face with a shaky hand. His voice came out broken, but stronger than before. Facts. Rebecca nodded. Yes, Aaron, facts. Judge Callahan looked over the courtroom. Mary hid, Wendy stormed in, Rod threatened the court, and every one of them thought fear would end this case. He picked up the gavel. They were wrong. The gavel came down. This time Aaron did not flinch. He watched Rod sitting there, no longer untouchable, no longer in control, no longer just a shadow behind Mary's family. He was on the record now. And once again, Aaron's truth had survived their threat. The courtroom was still frozen after Rod's threat. Judge Callahan sat at the bench, his jaw tight, his eyes locked on Rod like he was trying to decide whether anger or restraint would win first. Then the side door opened. A woman stepped into the courtroom. Everyone turned. Judge Callahan's face changed the moment he saw her. It was his wife. She stood near the wall, her eyes red, her face pale, and her phone gripped in her hand. Judge Callahan, she said, her voice shaking, it's done. The room went silent. Rod leaned back in his chair and smiled. I already did. Aaron stared at Rod. Frank whispered no. Geoff's hands tightened on Aaron's chair. Rebecca looked from Rod to Callahan's wife, already understanding what had happened. Rod had not been bluffing. He had already sent the message. He had already used the secret. Judge Callahan slowly stood from the bench. His wife looked at him, hurt all over her face. You should have told me yourself, she said. Callahan closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them again, he looked older. I know, he said quietly. Rod smiled wider. Now step down. Rebecca snapped, Judge, do not let him win. Callahan looked at her. For the first time since Aaron had met him, the judge looked truly trapped. Aaron's breathing started to shake. No, Aaron said, forcing the word out, no, no. Frank crouched beside him. Aaron, breathe. Aaron shook his head, tears filling his eyes. They do it again. Rebecca turned to Judge Callahan. Judge, this is exactly the pattern. They threaten people, expose private pain, and force them out. If you step down now, Rod gets what he came for. Callahan gripped the edge of the bench. I know. Then don't, Geoff said. Callahan looked at Geoff. Geoff's voice broke. You said you weren't theirs. Callahan's face tightened with pain. I'm not. Rod laughed. Then stay and watch your life burn. Callahan's wife flinched. That was the moment everything changed. Judge Callahan looked at his wife, then at Aaron, then at Rebecca. His voice came out low. I need to go. Aaron's face crumbled. What? Callahan looked directly at him. You need a new judge. Rebecca stepped forward. Judge. No, Callahan said firmly, listen to me. Rod has now made me part of the facts. He threatened me personally. He dragged my family into this case. If I stay, they will use that later to attack every ruling I make. They will say I was biased. They will say I was protecting myself. They will try to destroy your case through me. Aaron shook his head hard. No, you help. Callahan's eyes softened. I did help and I am not done helping, but I cannot be the judge anymore. Rod smirked. Smart man. Callahan turned his head slowly toward Rod. No, he said, you still do not understand. Rod's smile faded. Callahan looked at the court reporter. Keep the record open. The court reporter nodded. Callahan stood tall, even though his face carried the weight of everything he had just lost. Let the record reflect that Rod entered this courtroom and attempted to blackmail the court. Let the record reflect that the threat was carried out while proceedings were still active. Let the record reflect that this court finds the conduct to be direct intimidation, obstruction, and retaliation connected to Aaron's case. Rod sat forward. Wait. Callahan raised his hand. You wanted me gone, fine, but you do not get a clean exit. Rebecca's eyes sharpened. Callahan continued. I am referring this matter immediately for emergency reassignment outside this county. No family-connected judge, no local courthouse influence, no private calls, no backroom pressure. Aaron blinked through his tears. Outside. Callahan nodded. Yes, they cannot use the same courthouse if the courthouse is compromised. Rebecca stepped closer. Judge, will the protective orders remain? They remain until the new judge reviews them, Callahan said. The subpoenas already granted remain active. The record from today follows the case, Wendy's outburst follows the case, Matt's admission follows the case, Rod's threat follows the case. Frank let out a shaky breath. So he didn't stop it. Callahan looked at Aaron. No, he said, he made it bigger. Rod's face went pale. Rebecca turned toward Rod. You just gave us grounds to move this case out of their reach. Rod stood up. This is bullshit. The bailiff stepped toward him. Callahan's voice cut through the room. Sit down. Rod hesitated. Callahan leaned forward. One more move and you will be detained before I leave this bench. Rod slowly sat. Aaron stared at Callahan, confused and broken. But you go. Callahan nodded. Yes. Aaron's voice cracked. Then they went. Callahan came down from the bench and walked closer to Aaron, stopping a respectful distance away. No, he said, they wanted silence, they did not get it. They wanted the record buried, it is not buried. They wanted you alone, you are not alone. They wanted me to disappear quietly, I will not. Aaron cried harder. They hurt everyone. Callahan looked back at his wife. She stood there with tears in her eyes. Yes, he said, they do. His wife looked at Rod with disgust. Then she looked at Aaron. This is what they did to you, she asked softly. Aaron nodded, crying. They scare people. She wiped her face and looked at her husband. Then finished the record. Callahan stared at her. She stepped closer. Our marriage is our problem, she said, but that man does not get to use me to bury this case. Rod's mouth opened. Rebecca whispered, damn. Callahan's eyes filled with emotion. His wife looked at the court reporter. Put me on the record if you need to, I received the message. Rod sent it to force my husband off this case, I will testify to that. Rod shouted, you can't do that. She turned on him. You already did. The room went silent. Aaron stared at her like he could not believe it. Frank whispered, she just saved it. Geoff leaned down near Aaron. You hear that? Rod's threat is evidence now. Aaron tried to breathe. Evidence, he whispered. Rebecca nodded. Yes, evidence. Callahan returned to the bench one last time. I am recusing from further judicial decisions after entering emergency preservation orders and reassignment instructions due to direct personal intimidation by Rod. This matter is to be transferred outside local control immediately. He looked at Rebecca. File the emergency motion tonight, include everything. Rebecca nodded. I will. He looked at Aaron. Aaron, I am sorry. Aaron shook his head. You tried. Callahan's face broke for a second. Yes, he said, I tried. Aaron wiped his face. New judge, not family. Not family, Callahan said, not local, not theirs. Aaron looked at Rod. Rod was no longer smiling. Aaron's voice came out broken but strong enough to carry. You lose control. Rod glared at him. Rebecca stepped beside Aaron's chair. He's right. Callahan brought the gavel down. This hearing is adjourned pending emergency reassignment. The sound echoed through the room. This time it did not feel like an ending. It felt like the case breaking out of the cage Mary's family had built around it. Callahan stepped away from the bench and walked toward his wife. Rebecca gathered her files. Frank held the evidence bag close. Geoff stood behind Aaron's chair. Aaron stared at Rod one last time. His body was tired. His speech was damaged. His trust was gone. But the case was still alive. And now it was leaving their territory. The next morning, the courtroom was different. It was not Mary's county anymore. It was not the same building. It was not the same room where Wendy had stormed in, where Rod had threatened Judge Callahan, and where Aaron had watched another person get hurt because of him. Aaron sat in his chair with Geoff behind him and Frank at his side. Rebecca stood at the table with a stack of files so thick it looked like she had not slept at all. Rod sat across the room with Wendy beside him. Wendy was no longer yelling. Rod was no longer smiling. Then the door near the bench opened. The new judge stepped in. He was a large man with tired eyes and a voice that filled the room before he even sat down. "Court is in session," the bailiff said. Everyone stood except Aaron, who stayed in his chair, hands gripping the armrests. The judge sat down and looked over the file. "I am Judge Tommuse," he said, "and before anyone tries to play games, let me make one thing clear." He lifted the folder and dropped it onto the bench. "I am taking Callahan's shit out." Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly. Rod's head lifted. Aaron looked confused. Judge Tommuse pointed at the file. "Callahan's family issue is not going to be used to poison this case. Rod tried to blackmail him, and that stays in the record as conduct by Rod, but Callahan's private life is not the case. Aaron is the case, the threats are the case, the missing Mary is the case, the destroyed statement is the case, the family-connected judge is the case, the police intimidation is the case." Aaron breathed out slowly. Rebecca nodded. "Thank you, Judge." Rod leaned back and said, "Then we want Wendy as counsel for the family." The courtroom went quiet. Wendy lifted her chin like she expected the judge to be impressed. Judge Tommuse stared at Rod. "You want Wendy as counsel?" Rod nodded. "Yes." Judge Tommuse looked at Wendy. "Are you a licensed attorney?" Wendy's face twitched. "I represent my family's interests." "That is not what I asked," Judge Tommuse said. "Are you a licensed attorney?" Wendy hesitated. "No." "Then order denied." Rod sat up. "You can't deny us representation." Judge Tommuse looked at him like Rod had just bored him. "I did not deny you representation. I denied your attempt to put a non-lawyer in as counsel after she already entered a courtroom, fired an attorney, threatened a medically vulnerable plaintiff, and attempted to take control of a proceeding." Rebecca glanced at Aaron. Aaron's eyes stayed on the judge. Judge Tommuse continued, "Wendy may represent herself if she becomes a party. She may not represent Mary, she may not represent Rod, she may not represent Rob, she may not represent the whole family like this is some backyard family meeting." Wendy snapped, "You don't know who we are." Judge Tommuse leaned forward. "That is the wrong sentence to say to me." Wendy went silent. Judge Tommuse looked at Rod. "And before you start looking for dirt on me, let me save you the effort. I'm an open book, 3 divorces, 2 bankruptcies, 1 adult son who hates me, a daughter who barely calls. I had a drinking problem 20 years ago and I talk about it at public recovery events twice a year. I once got removed from a case for calling a lawyer an idiot on record, and I still think he was an idiot." Frank blinked. Geoff whispered, "What the hell?" Judge Tommuse looked directly at Rod. "So if you plan to blackmail me, bring something new, because I already told everyone my worst chapters myself." Rod's face tightened. Aaron stared at Judge Tommuse, shocked. The judge turned to Aaron. "Aaron, you hear me?" Aaron swallowed hard. "Yeah." "You do not have to trust me," Judge Tommuse said. "You do not have to like court, you do not have to believe this system is clean. From what I read, you have every reason to hate it." Aaron's eyes filled with tears. Judge Tommuse tapped the file. "But in this courtroom, nobody gets to use secrets, family names, fake power, or backroom fear to shut you up." Aaron's mouth trembled. Rebecca placed a hand gently on the back of his chair. Aaron forced out, "Good." Judge Tommuse looked back at Wendy and Rod. "Now let's talk about counsel. Matt is fired." Wendy folded her arms. "Yes." Matt, sitting 2 rows back, looked like he wanted to disappear. Judge Tommuse nodded. "Fine, he is no longer counsel if he has been properly discharged, but Wendy is not replacing him. You will retain licensed counsel or you will proceed individually within the rules, and if Mary is missing, nobody gets to pretend they speak for her unless they have legal authority." Rod said, "Mary is family." Judge Tommuse snapped, "Mary is a missing party with allegations against her. Family is not a law license." Rebecca almost smiled. Aaron looked at Frank. Frank whispered, "This judge don't play." Judge Tommuse looked down at the file again. "Now for the standing orders. Protective orders remain. Evidence preservation remains. Subpoenas remain. The Callahan recusal stays noted, but his personal issue is sealed from public use unless directly relevant to Rod's intimidation. Rod's eyes narrowed. Judge Tommuse looked at him. You wanted Callahan gone. Congratulations, you got me. The room went quiet. Judge Tommuse continued, and I am much less polite. Aaron's shoulders relaxed for the first time since entering the courtroom. Rebecca stood. Judge, we are requesting that Wendy be questioned under oath regarding her role in directing prior legal filings, police contact, and intimidation of Aaron. Granted, Judge Tommuse said. Wendy exploded. No. Judge Tommuse looked at her. Yes. I'm not answering her questions. Then you will answer mine, he said, and if you refuse lawful questions there will be consequences. Rod leaned toward Wendy and whispered something. Judge Tommuse pointed at him. Do not coach her. Rod sat back. Aaron watched them both. His voice came out broken but clear. They scared. Everyone looked at him. Wendy glared. Aaron flinched, but Frank put a hand on his shoulder. Judge Tommuse looked at Aaron. What did you say? Aaron swallowed. They scared. Judge Tommuse nodded slowly. Maybe they are. Aaron looked at Wendy. She loud when power, quiet when rules. Rebecca's face softened with pride. Frank whispered, that's right. Geoff wiped his eyes. Judge Tommuse pointed at the court reporter. That statement goes in the record. Wendy's face turned red. Rod looked away. Aaron blinked through his tears. Again his words mattered. Judge Tommuse leaned back. Rebecca, you may proceed with discovery. Start with Wendy, Rod, Rob, Mary's location, communications with Matt, communications with officers, and the prior defamation ruling. I want the family judge issue fully briefed. If there was a conflict, I want names, dates, and proof. Rebecca nodded. Yes, Judge. Judge Tommuse looked at Rod. And Rod. Rod looked up. If you threaten this court, Aaron, Rebecca, Geoff, Frank, any witness, any officer, or any member of my family, I will not step down. I will not run. I will not negotiate with you. I will put it on the record and bury you in sanctions. Rod said nothing. Judge Tommuse looked at Wendy. And you will not speak to Aaron directly, not in this courtroom, not outside it, not through someone else. Wendy's jaw tightened. Aaron stared at the judge, tears running down his face. My case stay alive. Judge Tommuse looked at him. Yes, he said, your case stays alive. Aaron wiped his face with a shaking hand. I hate court. Judge Tommuse nodded. You can hate it all you want, just keep showing up with the facts. Aaron looked at Rebecca. Rebecca smiled softly. We've got facts. Aaron looked at Geoff and Frank. Geoff leaned down. We're still here. Frank nodded. Not going anywhere. Judge Tommuse picked up the gavel. Then let's get to work. The gavel came down. This time Aaron did not hear it like a threat. He heard it like a door opening. Rod could not blackmail this judge. Wendy could not take over the room. Mary could not hide forever. And Aaron, even with broken speech and broken trust, still had something they could not steal. The record. The facts. And people who refused to let him fight alone. The courtroom had just started to settle when the back doors opened again. This time nobody yelled. Nobody stormed in. Mary stepped into the room. Every head turned. Aaron's whole body went stiff. Frank immediately moved closer to him. Easy, Frank whispered, she can't touch you. Geoff stood behind Aaron's chair, his hands tightening on the handles. Rebecca slowly turned and stared at Mary like she had been waiting for this moment all night. Rod looked shocked. Wendy looked angry. Matt looked like he had seen a ghost. Mary walked forward with her chin up, acting like she still owned the room. My lawyer Matt is my lawyer, Mary said, not my family's. Judge Tommuse looked at her over his glasses. For a moment he said nothing. Then he leaned toward the microphone. Noted. Mary blinked like she expected a bigger reaction. Judge Tommuse pointed toward Rod and Wendy. Please go to your family. Mary's face tightened. I came to speak for myself. And you will, Judge Tommuse said, from the proper place. Mary looked toward Matt. Matt sat frozen. Judge Tommuse looked at him. Matt, come back up. Matt stood slowly and walked back to the counsel table like every step hurt. Rebecca crossed her arms. Aaron stared at Mary, his eyes filling with fear and rage. His voice came out broken. She here. Frank crouched beside him. I know, keep breathing. Aaron shook his head. She came my house. Judge Tommuse heard him. He looked at Mary. Mary, before this goes any further, you are under a protective order. You are not to speak directly to Aaron, Geoff, Frank, or any witness unless I allow it. Do you understand? Mary looked offended. I never threatened him. Aaron flinched. Rebecca snapped, Judge. Judge Tommuse held up one hand. Mary, that was not an answer. Do you understand the order? Mary's jaw tightened. Yes. Good, Judge Tommuse said. Then sit with your family and let your lawyer speak. Mary walked to Rod and Wendy, but the moment she sat down, Wendy leaned toward her and whispered angrily. Judge Tommuse pointed at them. No whispering strategy while I am sorting counsel. Wendy sat back hard. Rod looked away. Judge Tommuse turned to Matt. Matt, are you Mary's lawyer? Matt swallowed. Yes, Judge, I represent Mary. Do you represent Wendy? No. Rod. No. Rob. No. The family as a group. No, Judge. Judge Tommuse looked at Mary. Mary, is that your understanding? Mary nodded. Yes, Matt is my lawyer. Wendy and Rod had no right speaking for me. Rod's face darkened. Wendy snapped, are you serious? Judge Tommuse slammed the gavel once. Wendy. Wendy went silent. Rebecca stepped forward. Judge, Mary's statement creates a major issue. If Matt only represented Mary, then any instructions from Wendy or Rod in Mary's legal matters may have been unauthorized. Judge Tommuse nodded. That is exactly where my mind went. Matt looked nervous. Rebecca continued, and if Wendy and Rod used Mary's name to push filings, threats, or pressure against Aaron, then we need those communications preserved immediately. Judge Tommuse looked at Matt. They already are, and now I want a written explanation of who gave you instructions when and under what claimed authority. Matt nodded. Yes, Judge. Mary leaned forward. I did not tell them to come here and make fools of themselves. Rod snapped, Mary, shut up. Judge Tommuse looked at Rod. Rod, that is the last time you tell anyone to shut up in my courtroom. Rod's mouth closed. Aaron stared at Mary. His breathing got faster. Rebecca noticed and moved closer to him. Aaron, you're safe, she's on the record now. Aaron's lips trembled. She ripped paper. Mary's head turned toward him, but she caught herself before speaking. Judge Tommuse looked at Mary. That is one of the allegations, that you destroyed a written statement. Mary's face went pale for half a second. I don't know what he's talking about. Frank stood up straight. Yes, you do. Rebecca raised a hand. Frank, let me. Frank stepped back, but his eyes stayed locked on Mary. Rebecca picked up the evidence bag with the torn statement. Judge, this is the ripped statement Frank preserved after Mary allegedly destroyed it. Judge Tommuse looked at Mary. Mary, your lawyer can answer for now, do not speak unless asked. Mary looked furious, but she stayed quiet. Matt rubbed his forehead. Judge Tommuse asked, Matt, does your client deny destroying the statement? Matt looked at Mary. Mary stared straight ahead. Matt said, at this time, my client denies knowingly destroying police evidence. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Knowingly, she repeated. Judge Tommuse noticed it too. That word is doing a lot of work, counselor. Matt said nothing. Aaron forced his voice out. She did. The room went quiet. She took it, ripped it, said Davis fired. Mary's face hardened. Rebecca gently placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder. That's enough, you did good. Judge Tommuse looked at the court reporter. Entered into the record. Aaron's eyes watered. Mary looked away. For the first time, she did not look powerful. She looked trapped. Judge Tommuse leaned back and looked across the courtroom. So now we have Mary present. Matt confirmed as Mary's counsel only, Wendy denied as family counsel, Rod already on the record for attempted intimidation, and allegations that Wendy and Rod may have acted without authority in Mary's name. Rebecca nodded. Yes, Judge. Judge Tommuse looked at Mary. You came in here to separate yourself from your family, that is your right, but understand this. Separating yourself from them also means you do not get to hide behind them. Mary said nothing. Aaron stared at her shaking. Then he whispered, "Good." Geoff leaned down near him. "You okay?" Aaron took a hard breath. "No." Frank touched his shoulder. "That's okay too." Judge Tommuse looked at Rebecca. "Proceed carefully, I want this clean, no shortcuts, no circus." Rebecca nodded. "Yes, Judge." Then Judge Tommuse looked at Mary, Wendy, and Rod. "And all three of you need to understand something. The more you walk into this courtroom trying to control the story, the more you prove Aaron's point." Aaron looked up. Judge Tommuse turned to him. "Facts, Aaron." Aaron nodded slowly. "Facts." The gavel came down again. And now Mary was no longer missing. She was in the room. She was on the record. And for the first time, she had to answer without the family speaking for her. Matt stood at the table beside Mary, trying to sound calm even though his voice shook. "My client said this is the first time she is seeing that note," Matt said. Rebecca slowly turned her head toward him. For a second she did not speak. Then she picked up the evidence bag with the torn statement inside and held it up where the whole courtroom could see it. "Your client came into my client's home," Rebecca said, her voice sharp and controlled. "She called him a crippled kid. She caused my client to have a severe seizure which has now affected his ability to speak clearly. She stood in his home, ripped up a written statement, threatened the people caring for him, and then tried to pretend none of it happened." Mary's face hardened. "I never." Judge Tommuse slammed his gavel. "Mary, your lawyer speaks for you unless I ask you a direct question." Mary sat back furious. Aaron's hands shook on the arms of his chair. Frank leaned down beside him. "Breathe, Aaron," Frank whispered. "Rebecca got this." Aaron's eyes stayed locked on Mary. "She lied," he forced out. Rebecca looked back at him gently. "I know." Then she turned back to Matt. "You say this is the first time Mary has seen the note. Fine, then let's talk about that. If she never saw it, how did she know Officer Davis had taken a statement? How did she know whose names were in it? And why did she tell Aaron, Geoff, and Frank to keep her family's names out of their mouths?" Matt swallowed. "That is not established." Rebecca placed the evidence bag on the table. "Then let's establish it." She looked toward Frank. "Frank, did you see Mary rip the statement?" Frank stood straighter. "Yes." "Did you see her hold it?" "Yes." "Did you see her tear it?" "Yes." "Did you hear her threaten Officer Davis?" Frank's jaw tightened. "Yes, she said he was fired." Rebecca turned toward Geoff. "Geoff, did you hear that too?" Geoff nodded. "I heard it." Rebecca looked at the judge. "And Aaron, despite his speech issues after the seizure, has stated multiple times that Mary ripped the paper and threatened Officer Davis." Aaron lifted his head. "She did," he said, broken but clear. Mary looked away. Judge Tommuse stared at Matt. "Counselor, your client may deny it, but do not stand in front of me and act like there is no witness testimony. There is." Matt nodded stiffly. "Yes, Judge." Rebecca stepped closer to the table. "And there is something else. Mary did not only destroy a note, she destroyed safety. Aaron was in his own home, he was vulnerable, he was scared, and after that confrontation his body gave out." Aaron's breathing caught. Frank touched his shoulder. Rebecca's voice softened, but her anger stayed. "Now he sits in this courtroom struggling to speak while Mary claims she has never seen the very note she allegedly ripped apart." Matt said allegedly. Rebecca turned on him. "Yes, allegedly, that is why we are here, that is why we have witnesses, that is why we have medical records, that is why we have a torn statement in an evidence bag instead of a clean story from your client." Judge Tommuse leaned back. "Rebecca, what are you asking for?" Rebecca lifted her folder. "I am asking that Mary be ordered to preserve all communications related to Officer Davis, the statement, Aaron, Frank, Geoff, Wendy, Rod, Rob, and any officer who entered Aaron's home. I am also asking that Mary be questioned under oath as soon as possible." Mary snapped her head up. "No." Judge Tommuse looked at her. "Mary." She went silent again. Matt said quickly, "Judge, my client is not prepared for questioning today." Rebecca said Aaron was not prepared to lose his speech either. The courtroom went still. Aaron's eyes filled with tears. Geoff put a hand on the back of Aaron's chair. Judge Tommuse looked at Rebecca for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Preservation order is granted. Mary's deposition will be scheduled. Matt, you will prepare your client, and Mary." Mary looked up slowly. Judge Tommuse's voice dropped. "If you destroyed evidence, threatened a witness, or used police power to intimidate Aaron, this will not stay a family problem. It becomes a court problem." Aaron whispered, "Good." Mary's eyes flicked toward him. Frank immediately moved between them. "Don't look at him," Frank said. Judge Tommuse pointed at Mary. "Do not engage with Aaron." Mary's jaw clenched, but she obeyed. Rebecca looked at Aaron. "You did good," she said quietly. Aaron shook his head. "I hate this." "I know," Rebecca said, "but they are not controlling the room anymore." Aaron looked at the torn statement on the table. His voice came out small but strong. "My words matter." Judge Tommuse answered before Rebecca could. "Yes, Aaron, your words matter." Aaron cried silently. For so long, Mary's family had treated his voice like something they could break, twist, or erase. But now the torn note sat in front of everyone. Mary was in the room. Matt was on the record. Wendy and Rod had already exposed themselves. And Aaron's broken words were still enough to move the case forward. Rebecca turned back to the judge. "Then we continue." Judge Tommuse nodded. "Yes," he said, "we continue." Aaron turned his chair slightly toward Rebecca. His face was wet with tears, his breathing was uneven, and his hands would not stop shaking on the arms of his chair. He tried to speak, but the words came out broken and choppy. Rebecca. Rebecca turned away from the table immediately. "I'm here, Aaron." Aaron swallowed hard, his mouth trembled like every word had to fight its way out. "What I need to testifier," Aaron asked. "I can't even speak right." The courtroom went quiet. Frank's face broke. Geoff looked down, trying not to cry. Aaron forced himself to keep going. What I say, how I say it, they look at me like I'm stupid." Rebecca crouched beside his chair so she was eye level with him. "No," she said softly, "listen to me, you do not have to sound perfect to tell the truth." Aaron shook his head. "Too choppy." "I know it feels that way," Rebecca said, "but choppy does not mean wrong, slow does not mean wrong, broken speech does not mean broken truth." Aaron's eyes filled again. "I don't want them laugh." Frank leaned closer. "If they laugh, they answer to me." Judge Tommuse looked at Frank. "Frank." Frank looked up. "Sorry, Judge." Judge Tommuse leaned forward from the bench. "Aaron, no one in this courtroom will mock your speech. Not today, not ever. If they do, they will be removed." Aaron looked at the judge, scared but listening. Judge Tommuse continued, "You can testify in a way that works for you, speaking, typing, yes or no answers, breaks, short questions, whatever accommodation is needed." Aaron blinked. "Type." Rebecca nodded. "Yes, you can type, you can answer slowly, you can ask me to repeat a question, you can stop if you need a break." Aaron looked at Mary's side of the room. Mary sat stiffly, not looking at him. Wendy looked angry. Rod looked annoyed. Matt looked nervous. Aaron's voice shook. "They twist words." Rebecca's face hardened. "That is why I will be there. If they twist your words, I stop them. If they ask unfair questions, I object. If they try to confuse you, I make them slow down." Aaron's lips trembled. "I scared." Rebecca nodded. "I know." Aaron whispered, "Court hurt me." Geoff crouched beside him. "This time we are not letting court hurt you alone." Aaron looked at him. "You stay." Geoff nodded. "I'm staying." Aaron looked at Frank. "You too." Frank placed a hand over Aaron's shaking hand. "I'm right here." Aaron turned back to Rebecca. "What I need say." Rebecca spoke slowly, making sure he could follow every word. "You only need to say what you remember, nothing extra, nothing fancy, just the truth." Aaron stared at her. Rebecca held up one finger. "One Mary came to your home." Aaron nodded. "She did." Rebecca held up a second finger. 2. She called you names and scared you. Aaron's jaw tightened. Crippled kid. Rebecca's eyes softened. Yes. She held up a third finger. 3. She ripped the